But there was one night he never forgot. 15 years ago, when dispatch asked engineers to blow their horns for a dying boy at St. Mary's Hospital. Dean had pulled hard enough to burn his hand. And, hello there, I'm your Grandpa Joe, and this is Stories with Grandpa. Here, every tale has a secret to share. Every word carries wisdom, and every moment reminds us that stories never really die. So, are you ready? Let's start today's story. The night Sarah Alvarez's little boy died, the train didn't stop. It roared through the sleeping town like a judgment. Iron screaming on iron, a ribbon of white light slicing the dark in two. She stood on the empty platform with a teddy bear crushed in her hands and begged the universe for mercy. Somewhere between the hospital on the hill and the tracks that carved Cedar Ridge in half, a miracle failed to arrive. The firemen bowed their heads. The doctor said the word nobody knows how to hold, and the station clock kept perfect time. People said she went mad after that. Some said she cursed the train. Others said the train cursed her. They told stories to cover the places where truth had no language. If you waited at the rusted bench long enough, they whispered, you could see her there at 11:13 p.m. The minute the northbound freight tore by, rocking, whispering, calling for a boy who never answered. That was 15 years ago, and tonight, out of nowhere, with the same weather, the same thin moon, the same winter ache, the distant horn sounds different. It's lower, slower, closer. For the first time since her son's death, the train is preparing to stop. No one knows why. Only that grief, like any faithful passenger, has more than one station. Cedar Ridge was the kind of place most travelers never noticed. A courthouse leaning toward the west like it was tired of standing straight. A diner that served pie more famous than the town itself. A barber who still charged $7 and a smile. Generations lived and died here without ever leaving. But if Cedar Ridge was small, Sarah's grief was endless. Before tragedy, she had been sunlight, organizing toy drives, baking pies for neighbors, teaching Sunday school. After tragedy, she became shadow. She shopped only after dark, avoided eye contact, kept her world to the size of her porch and the length of the station platform. Every Thursday night, she sat on the cracked wooden bench of the depot, a thermos of cocoa between her palms, waiting. At 11:13 sharp, the freight thundered through, steel, sparks, and storm. She never waved, she never wept. She simply watched, lips moving with words no one could hear. Children dared each other to ride past the depot at night, whispering about the ghost mother who haunted the platform. Adults shook their heads and lowered their voices when she walked by. But Sarah wasn't a ghost. She was waiting for what no one knew. Jonah Harper was 17 when he noticed her. He was delivering newspapers at dawn, the strap of the bag carving into his shoulder, when he spotted her sitting there in the half-light, as though she belonged more to the station than the town. Everyone knew the stories, but seeing her up close was different. Grief hadn't hollowed her out. It had made her sharp, carved from something the rest of the world couldn't touch. "You're up early," she said. "Or late," Jonah answered. "Depends on who you ask." Her mouth lifted, almost a smile. "What's your name?" "Jonah." "Biblical," she murmured, regrettably. She laughed, a small startled sound. From then on, Jonah left a folded newspaper under her bench. The next morning, a note waited for him, a line of poetry, handwritten. The week after, another. Soon it became their ritual. Paper and poem, silence and companionship. They never spoke of what they had lost. They didn't need to. Grief recognizes itself. Jonah began to crave her company, not because he pitied her, but because she was the only adult who didn't pretend life's wounds could be tidied away. She carried her sorrow like a lantern, and in her presence, he felt less alone. One gray November afternoon, Jonah heard the rumor. He was at the station dropping off papers for Mr. Howard, the station master, when the radio crackled. Test stoppage, Cedar Ridge, signal alignment, temporary deceleration. Jonah froze. Did that just say Cedar Ridge? Mr. Howard frowned. Not a real stop, just a signal test. Don't get your hopes up. But Jonah's heart was hammering. For 15 years, the 1113 had never paused. Tonight, it would break its pattern. He biked across town, lungs burning, climbed the depot stairs 2 at a time. Sarah, tonight, the train, it's slowing, just a test, but it's real. Her thermos slipped, cocoa blooming across the concrete. Why? She whispered. Because sometimes, Jonah said, the universe remembers to be kind. Behind them, Mr. Howard shook his head. It's nothing. Doors won't open, nothing will change. But Sarah wasn't listening. Her eyes were locked on the horizon. For the first time in 15 years, her waiting might mean something. Miles down the track, engineer Dean Whitaker guided the 1113 northbound. He had driven trains his whole adult life. But what the town didn't know was that Dean carried ghosts, too. 3 years earlier, his daughter Lily had died in a car accident. 16 years old, bright as sunrise, gone in a single night. His marriage ended after that. His wife found a new life elsewhere. Dean stayed with the rails. Trains only knew forward, and forward was all he had left. But there was one night he never forgot. 15 years ago, when dispatch asked engineers to blow their horns for a dying boy at St. Mary's Hospital. Dean had pulled hard enough to burn his hand, and in the split second, as the train roared through Cedar Ridge, he had seen a woman on a platform clutch at something to her chest. That image had haunted him. Now he was here again. Same train, same line, same cold night. This time, dispatch had ordered a test stop at Cedar Ridge, just a slowdown, but enough to change everything. By evening, the whole town buzzed. Families bundled in scarves. Children begged to go. Couples whispered of omens and second chances. The platform filled with people, and at its center sat Sarah, back straight, eyes fierce, waiting. Jonah stood beside her, nervous and hopeful. Mr. Howard clutched his ledger like a shield. Then came the sound. The rails sang. The horn wailed, low, patient, rolling across the fields. Headlights broke the dark. The 1113 stormed forward, and then, impossibly, began to slow. Steel groaned. Sparks flew. The train entered the station heavy and alive and eased into silence. For the first time in 15 years, the train stopped. The door of the engine clanged. A ladder dropped. A man descended with a lantern in his hand. Dean looked at Sarah and knew her immediately. Grief marks faces better than time. "Ma'am," he said softly, "my name's Dean. I've been on this line a long time. 15 years ago, I pulled the horn for a boy at St. Mary's. I saw you here. I never forgot." Sarah's lips trembled. "His name was Mateo." Dean nodded, as if committing it to Scripture. Mateo. He reached into his coat and handed her a pocket watch, brass, worn smooth. "This belonged to my daughter, Lily's grandfather. I never wound it. Couldn't bear the ticking, but tonight feels like it belongs here, not with me. Sarah wound it once. The soft tick, tick, tick rose into the frozen air. She closed her hand around it and whispered, "I hear it." Jonah swallowed hard. "So do I." Dean's voice cracked. "I'm sorry. For all the nights the world kept going and didn't stop for you." Sarah stepped closer, eyes wet but steady. "It stopped tonight." "That's enough." The horn blew again, short, respectful. The train lurched forward, gathered speed, and disappeared into the night. Silence fell, not heavy, not cruel, gentle. Sarah looked at Jonah and smiled through her tears. "I've waited long enough. I think it's time I lived again." He nodded, unable to speak. Together, they walked off the platform, leaving behind the cocoa stain, the bench, and 15 years of waiting. The town would tell the story for generations. The night the cursed train finally stopped. Some would call it coincidence. Others would call it mercy. But those who had been there knew better. Because grief may be a passenger, but love is the station that never closes. Now, before you go, remember, this old grandpa has many more stories to share. If you don't want to miss the next one, tap that subscribe button. It's like sitting right here beside me, ready for another tale. I'll be here, waiting with a new story just for you. Until then, keep the stories alive in your heart. Goodbye